probably people listening right now who feel like they're already halfway in the grave, emotionally, spiritually, in different relationships, maybe even physically. What do you say to someone who feels like they've got nothing left to resurrect?
What comes to my mind there is to remember that it's not our job to do the resurrection. The resurrection does not come from ourselves. That is the work of God. It is the promise of Jesus, who died and lived the resurrection for us. And so it's not our job to do the resurrection. We might not feel it. And when we don't feel it, when it feels like we have nothing left, that's when we lean on God, have conversations with God, and then have conversations with the people that God's placed around you. We are a connectional people, and we have support, and we support each other. And through those connections, we can start to see what we do have, and to know that promise and to feel that love. And even when everything's been stripped away, if we can make those connections, we can feel the connection that we have with neighbor and with God. It's that beautiful triangle of loving God and loving your neighbor.
Yeah, I've been in that position before where I've spent so much time struggling to let go of what I've lost that I totally miss the connections that I still have. You know, there's something holy in the letting go of what we've loved and lost. Faith doesn't erase the ache from that, and life's not about erasing that ache, but our faith can transform it. The gospel says we can love something fiercely and still let it go, and still be grateful. I guess the more secular way of saying that, it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. But the gospel is saying that, like, even in that loss, we can still be whole. We can still be alive. So, Dan, what's something that you've let go of in your life that you feel like had healed you?
That question sounds formational to me. So I go back to my formative days. I grew up in Central Florida.
Woohoo!
And grew up in the time of some of the largest advances in the space industry, and was fascinated by NASA. And I always dreamed of being an astronaut. I even found the application to be an astronaut when I was 10, sent that into NASA. They sent a really nice letter back saying that I needed to log hours of flight before I could apply. So the dream was there. And when I graduated high school, I graduated with a full paid scholarship to be an aerospace engineer.
Did not know
so
that.
my first, little known fact about Dan Pizzette.
Dan deepens, ladies and gentlemen. Only here on the Means of Grace podcast.
So my first year of college was studying to be an aerospace engineer.
That's cool.
And that whole year I was really miserable. I got to the final exam, an Intro to Aerospace Engineering 101, and the question was something about how many times could the space shuttle go around Jupiter's orbit, losing fuel at a cylindrical rate. I was 3 pages into this math problem, and I realized I knew the answer. And the answer was, I don't care.
And I hope someone else does.
Right. That's a problem for someone else these days. And I just realized that was not the problem for me to answer. And so I let it go and changed majors. And changing majors is something that people experience all the time. And for me, that was a catharsis. It was a release. And it helped me to start dreaming about what it is I'm called to do, rather than what it was I had a childhood dream of doing, what was realistic for me. And that was a moment of new life.
I'm kind of, I have my own kind of thoughts around why anyone would resist these wilderness moments, but I wanted to ask you, Megan, what do you think? Why do we find these introspection moments so challenging? why do we try to avoid them and essentially just kind of grit our teeth and keep going through instead of, finding time to find ourselves in these moments?
So that's a really good question. I'm not sure if I have a really good answer, but I'll give it a go. From my own experience.
That's right. You have your answer. That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I avoid them because when you're introspective and you have to listen, one, you may have to go on a different path, right? You may, and that is scary. So there's some fear there. I also think when you're introspective, and when you are listening for God and God speaks to you, you might have to feel the feels. And I think that it is difficult in our culture, in a culture where we often numb the feels, and numb the hard things, to actually like feel them and experience them, let them flow through us. So I kind of feel like it's a combination of being fearful of what that next step could be, and also that I have to feel my feelings. And that may just be me as a 6, but I think I don't like to feel and process. It's hard, right? It's hard, but really, really important work.
And the longer you go between doing it, the harder.
Yes.
And sometimes for some, I've found there's a tipping point where they're just like, okay, now I'm never going to.
Right.
And so I was about to ask you what your advice is for them, but that was a big question. How do you unlock some of these? So for people that are having blocks, right? That when they have, like maybe when you've gone too long, or when any of us have gone too long, what's something that you allow to trigger you into, to doing it? Or what can snap you out of it or make you go, okay, no, I need to go let some of this out?
Well, so that's a really good question. Let me think about that for a second. Well, so actually, I think that like being willing to talk to others, because I know sometimes we see Lent as a solitary thing, but I think it's also communal, because I think sometimes others give us the permission to,
say that again.
Yeah, others give us the permission to feel what we're feeling, and maybe they've had an experience too that's been really difficult. And when you see that others, right, when I've seen that like my friends have gone through like really difficult experiences, it gives me the faith that I too can go through a really difficult experience and I can practice those hard things because I see that they've done it too. I think that's been my probably biggest one. And when they give me permission, like I can give myself permission, and I can really be introspective at those, just towards those like really hard things that I need to process through in my life that I haven't for like a couple of years.
Right.
One of the best summaries of the Peace Conference was I had one of the participants of the conference come up to me on Sunday morning during our closing worship and say, I'm not sure exactly what I was expecting, but I didn't realize I was going to come away this uncomfortable.
Yes.
And to know that that's exactly how I need to be feeling. I mean, so, what is your driving purpose of the Peace Conference? To stir a holy discontent that will move us into action. And so I think that was one of the takeaways of the experience. And if we're honest with ourselves, we had to design, so kind of going back to your question, Jesse, what does it look like behind the curtain? Well, it requires, when you begin planning and designing an event like this, to say, yeah, some of these plenary speakers, some of these workshops are going to create a holy discontent, are going to make us uncomfortable. But if our purpose is to empower people for action, then, the old coaching concept, we won't change a behavior until our current behavior becomes uncomfortable enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it takes turning up the pain factor, the discontent, the discomfort to say,
Yeah.
okay, we've got to do things differently moving forward.
I'm going to take a little bit different direction because when I think about those words, holy conferencing, I really think about what that means for us as the church to be meeting together in a particular way. And so the example I'm going to give that really sticks out to me as an example of holy conferencing, I know we may talk a little bit more about in another way later, but when we got to the organization and rules part, which is toward the beginning of conference, it's the kind of procedural matters that we do in the introductory session, and we were making a change to the connectional table that proposed including more diverse voices at the table. And the holy conferencing is how that went. So a layperson stood up and went to the mic, asked a couple questions, made a recommendation to add vote, and there was a respectful conversation among the body where people were able to speak about it. And then we took a vote of the body and made the change to add voice and vote. And I think the experience is a model for churches of what it means to in holy, respectful, maybe challenging ways, but also to listen and to discern together God's work as a body. I think it's an example for churches to follow as well, because the purpose of holy conferencing includes the body of Christ doing the work of the church for the sake of the kingdom in ways that allow for healthy conversation, listening to diverse viewpoints, and for every voice to count. And so that for me was a particular moment of holy conferencing when we were together.
Bishop is a very unusual kind of role, but ordaining people is a very privileged act. And, you know, we have a retreat every spring with the persons who are being ordained. Kim Ingram is present. Amy Coles is also present, where we hear their stories of conversion and call. And I really want to know them as individuals. It's a very diverse group, actually much more diverse than our general culture. They come from multiple nations. They often come from other churches, other church traditions, and yet something leads them there to this place. And so it's just, it's a wonderful experience to see the diversity of how they express their ministries. And also, this just been a real gift, is a real gift to me, having made that exact same journey.
Yeah.
In other words, when I was a certified candidate and then went before the board and then walked across that same stage and was ordained. And so to be able to be a part of that for others is just a real gift. And I think going through the ordination questions, for example, this year, I was particularly struck by how relevant the prophetic ministry is with many of our clergy who are taking that very seriously around coming alongside the immigrant community, for example. And I said this to several of them when I was there. I said, you know, as I've gone over these ordination services, I have thought about you, and I'm grateful for you. They know I support them, but it's integral to what we say we're going to be and do when we're ordained. I would connect, therefore, the movement toward us from the Ukraine-Moldova Provisional Conference to have a covenant relationship.
Yes.
They have talked with us, met with us, written to us, and said, we would like to have a covenant relationship. This is the United Methodist Church in Ukraine today.
Yes.
And so to me, I hold those two together, regionalization and connection with another part of the world in a deeper way. And so we're going to journey toward this. We've had a lot of positive response thus far. We have people in our conference who know people in that part of the world and have done mission there. And so that'll be about starting new churches there, about prayer, about at some point maybe a leadership center there, support of clergy, mutual learning. What can they teach us
Oh gosh.
about living in a time of violence and war and keeping faith? And so, to me, that's very important. I think you're right, John. That's very important for us to show the persons who wonder legitimately, are we disconnecting? It's very important for us to show how we're connected. We're
Yes.
not just connected by the people who gather every 4 years and work on global matters. We're connected at the level of mission.
For clarity, I didn't grow up in Western North Carolina either.
Okay.
John and I are both native Floridians,
Nice.
and just for the record, and I'm going to get to Jesse's question in just a moment. I want people to know how important John's father is to me and my calling. John's father, the Reverend Bill Yeager, was our campus minister at University United Methodist Church and Student Center in Gainesville, Florida. And he's one of the very first people who was able to, who spoke with me about a calling. And he's one of the people that encouraged me in very significant ways. I'll always be thankful for him. And I guess that means I have to be thankful for John, too.
Yeah, I know. That's just the worst. Connections are deep.
Yeah.
I
So
love that.
Yadkin Valley District is like many districts, I think, throughout the South, where times have been changing. People sense it, but they're not sure what to do about it. We have a wonderful blend of urban, rural, town, and country. We have many strong churches, healthy, vital churches. In fact, I would dare say Yadkin Valley District has more than its fair share of healthy, vital churches. Yeah.
Shots fired. District
Yeah.
superintendents. The gauntlet is
listen,
down. Love it.
I'm really not a competitive person.
He says
will-
with his gator tie on, representing the national champions. Yes.
Yeah. And so the churches within the district, I've seen so many wonderful clergy leaders, laity in leadership, doing fantastic things. Some of the other features that make Yadkin Valley interesting, though, just to go a little bit deeper, and I'm going to speak to this actually at the DS installation on September 21st, 3 p.m., Mount Tabor United Methodist Church, if anybody'd like to be there. You know, it's weird. I kind of feel like inviting someone to my birthday party.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
the soil is significant in Yadkin Valley because of tobacco and other kinds of farming too. But the tobacco farming, the history is undeniable. Some ways fantastic and marvelous. Others require repentance and forgiveness and reconciliation because of the deep wounds that it caused and the pain and the harm. I could speak about that in very personal ways, but just suffice it to say, people are realizing, okay, this is not the 1950s anymore. What are we called to do next? Some other things about the soil. We have two of the best state parks in the Yadkin Valley District, Pilot Mountain State Park, Hanging Rock State Park. If anybody's looking for a day trip to do some beautiful hiking, put those two on your list.
Nice.
We've always needed to be attentive to what's happening in our context so that we can understand how to move forward. I think the current context is really turning up the heat in a way that perhaps people have not been anticipating or even wanting. I think when we observe social needs, social injustice, many people are content to offer up a prayer. Some people are willing to meet a real physical need right now in the moment, such as providing food, maybe even shelter, maybe even being within close proximity to somebody in need. But then a rare few are willing to get to the heart of the matter to understand why things are the way that they are. So to go back to the training that clergy in our conference experienced regarding racism, what about the groundwater? How can we identify the sources of that tributary? Why is the soil the way that it is? And how come when the water finds its way into the soil, into the ground, why is it causing injustice, hurt, and pain? A rare few are able and willing to do that kind of work, but that's what's needed.
So when we get to the Supreme Court with the coffins, there's a sound system set up, and we can begin. And Reverend Barber will set the tone for theologically what's going on and what we're doing there. And then a policy expert comes and shares, these are the harmful things in this bill that we care about that are impacting poor and low-income people in our communities. And then we had testimonies. So one of the guys from our community, Chris Shoemake, just finished high school, and he shared about how he grew up on SNAP benefits, how he grew up on Medicaid, how those things were essential to him getting through school, how he had a big health crisis and was in the hospital last year, and Medicaid paid for that, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And now he's going to college, to a community college, and he's still going to end up depending on SNAP benefits and Medicaid as he tries to go to school. And he said, I need this so I can focus. If I have to worry about what I'm going to eat, how am I ever going to get through school? And then our own Karen Roberts, who's one of our clergy in Wilkesboro, she shared about her father being in Spruce Pine. So Karen grew up in the mountains of North Carolina, and he depends on a local hospital there, which could end up being closed because of this budget. And so even though there's caveats, right? They put in some billions of dollars to try and help that, but it doesn't go through the whole 10 years of the budget. So it's kind of like a pretend fix, essentially. And if this hospital closes for her dad, he'll have to go over about an hour to the nearest hospital. So as he's aging and getting older and in need, that's a big concern for her, big concern for him, big concern for their community. So we heard these stories and these testimonies. A pastor came from California and shared about how someone was arrested and detained and taken by ICE in her church parking lot, and the trauma of that and the harm of that, and that this budget is going to cut. Cut support for people who need it, like SNAP and Medicaid, and it's going to increase the military budget and increase funding for ICE. So there'll be 10,000 masked agents running around arresting people and taking people.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you've been witnessing is a poorly funded effort by ICE. That's what we have all been witnessing, an extremely underfunded version.
Yeah.
It will no longer be underfunded.
So let me ask you guys a question. Hate to use the term devil's advocate. Christian podcast, but here we go. Those who voted for the bill would say that the cuts are necessary because the programs have become too large and are used by people who don't need them, and that they're full of waste, fraud, and abuse. Joel, let's start with you. What would you say to folks who believe that this bill is actually answering a lot of the issues that have arisen over the years?
Yeah, we've had some of these conversations and still are, because that's the talking point, right? Of like why this is important. And my kind of my simple comment back is often, if this is about fraud, waste, and abuse, then why are we not cutting the military budget or Homeland Security? No, there's fraud, waste, and abuse in there. And we already have a military budget that's larger than the 9 largest military budgets in the world combined. So we're going to add more money to it. I'm all for balancing the budget. I'm all for reducing stuff that is bloated and cutting out fraud and waste, right? But that in and of itself shows it isn't. And then the other piece is most of what this is, the process is going to be requiring people to work. In some kind of capacity. And we've seen states that have done this and how many people have gotten cut off from the support they need, even though they are working or they aren't able to work. It's more red tape. It's more flaws and chinks in the system. And so people end up losing the support and care and then try and get back on and struggle to do that. So we've seen it historically, how it's worked and how it's failed to work. And yet this is what we're going to try again.
I think one of the things that I've learned a lot is what amazing lay folks that we have in Western North Carolina. And I think when you're serving a local church, your context is just the people of that local church. And that's who you're investing your time in serving. And now I've been given a much broader picture into some other really amazing people that without being a district superintendent, I wouldn't ever know. And they're working hard to share God's love and to be creative and to adapt to challenges. And we've got wonderful people. Yesterday, I was doing a charge conference and was at Salem in Denver. And it was a cluster charge conference, but the lay leader was praying at the end. And as he prayed, he just thanked God for the churches that had gathered and thanked God for their open doors, and that their doors were open and ready to receive people. And it just struck me in a really significant way, just hearing him thank God for open doors. And I'm so glad that we serve a church that has open doors, both literally and spiritually and figuratively. Our doors are open, and I'm really grateful for that.
Amen.
One of the moments that stood out to me was, well, kind of throughout the week, Deep Time Asheville was a presence in the space. They had the coffee bar, which had this big sign over it that said, what did it say?
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah Coffee Bar, which I joked with Dustin. I was like, man, that's such a better name than Deep Time. But
and you're just like, I know.
Totally. He said a conference staff person who's steeped in the institution would think that. Is that how he responded?
Steeped in the institution.
Like it. But anyways, so they were there like the whole time slinging coffee, and GA, who is the pastor of social enterprise, a minister of social enterprise for Deep Time, he was, like just giving people hugs, dancing, rapping, just like he would just crack me up. I'd be walking by and he'd be reciting some scripture to somebody, and anyways, there was a point when the Deep Time folks got to share from the stage, and Dustin shared a little bit, GA shared a little bit, and then one of their newer sojourners, Cordelia, shared, and just shared from her personal story of what Deep Time and the community there had meant to her, what the opportunity to be a part of that spiritual community and the impact that it was having on others, what that meant to her. And it was just really awesome, knowing that her path hasn't been an easy one, and yet she was finding healing and purpose and calling, and that her gifts were being used for the kingdom through the work of Deep Time and the fresh expressions they have. Yeah, so Fresh Expressions, as the movement took shape in England, they really pushed against our kind of church culture where we go and hear about a program or idea, and then we bring it back to our church and try it, and said, what if we listened to our neighbors and listened to God first, and take time to really hear what our neighbors are looking for, are hoping for, or dreaming for, what kind of spiritual community they would want to be a part of, and then we form our community based off of that, out of that listening, out of those relationships we build as we listen. And so, yeah, there's a temptation, you go to the conference, you hear about Deep Time roasting coffee, and you're like, hey, I got an empty Sunday school room, I'm going to roast coffee.
That's right.
But it was the relationships that Dustin and GA built for those months and months that led to the thriving that it's experiencing now. It's not the idea, it's the relationships. And so that's really where it starts is, if you're a church member, listening to God, who are you calling me to reach out to in my community? Who are you calling me to be in relationship with? Finding a friend at church that you can do it with, not going at it alone. And to just establish a presence in those places, to be a friend, to be a part of those groups of people in those gatherings, those third places where people are gathering. Be a regular in those spaces for a while and get to know those spaces and the people there before you come in with a programmatic idea. And when we take that time, then it can be a lot more authentic and it can be a lot more contextual. I would just say I'm super proud of our conference in that space, that, we had folks leading all kinds of conversations, discussions, coffee. I think that there was somewhere between 30 and 40 people. I mentioned that when I introduced myself on the stage, I said that I'm the cat herder of the Western North Carolina French expression leaders. I never know about half of the stuff that's going on because it's just impossible to track. And so that was the same for the conference, that there's people there. I was like, oh, I didn't know you were coming. So I think
didn't even know you were Fresh Express.
Yeah, there's a huge group of us, and the conversations that they were having were awesome. The takeaways were really good, and you're just proud to be a member of the Western North Carolina Conference and the creativity that we represent to the wider denomination. So I'm proud of us.
We had started this riverside ministry at the Nantahala River called River of Life. And it just felt like such a gift. I mean, of all the places that you felt like you couldn't have a ministry, that was one of the places that it would be. And so I had proposed that to the president of Nantahala Outdoor Center. I says, hey, what if we started a ministry? And of course, that's one of those rhetorical questions, right? Because the answer is like, well, no, we can't really do that. But he says, yeah, what do you need? And I was like, oh my goodness. So, all right, let's do this thing. And so we started this Riverside ministry, and it was just felt like such a gift. And at our first service, I remember one of the folks came up to us and said, being good church folks, they tried to hand me money, and I was like, oh no, we don't need money. We're it's all good. God's good, and God's got this. And they're like, no, here, take the money anyway, right? Because it's not church if you don't give somebody money. And so anyway, then we're like, okay, what do we do with this? And through prayer, we listened to God's voice, and it felt like God was just telling us, hey, this was a gift that's been given to you. Why not take this money and use it as a gift to give water resources to people around the world? And so we did that for several years, and we always kind of, and we didn't, we had a few $100s that we would put towards water resources and every year. And so we would always look in the catalogs and say, oh man, wouldn't it be great to have a community well, to sponsor a community well? And we would see they were $8,000, and we thought, man, there's no way a bunch of dirtbag boaters are going to be able to afford an $8,000 well, community well. Anyway, I was introduced to Pam Carter, and she introduced me to Dr. Eugene, not personally, but told me about Dr. Eugene, the ministry that he had, and that we could get a couple of community wells, or we could get a community well for $2,000. And we thought, hey, we can do this. And so everybody got so excited at River of Life that we raised enough money for two wells that first year. And then the conference missions committee matched us with another well. So we were able to put in 3 wells that first year. And we just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And so it just so happens that Pam and Wanda and Mary Lou had a trip to Haiti that winter and said, hey, come along with us. And you can see some of the wells that you have paid for. I remember on that first trip going with everybody and riding around and seeing. I got to see the small credit loan program that Providence had done. That was phenomenal. And see some other school programs they were helping with. Some other. I got to see Dr. Eugene serving in the small little medical facilities around in these little tin shacks, in every little small town imaginable. And so then we finally ended up going up to Don Don, where one of our wells was. And I remember Dr. Eugene saying, hey, come over here. And they gathered the whole community up. So the whole community was gathered around the well, and we're feeling pretty good about it, and they're pretty excited about it, and And so Dr. Eugene says, hey, go stand with your hand under the well, under the spout of the well. And I'll go back and I'll pump the water. And so I thought, oh, that'll be really cool. So, this would be a great photo sort of thing. And I just remember the first time that water hit my hands as he was pumping it. Wow. It just really set me back. I mean, it was then that I realized what this was all meant. And that, like you said earlier, it's like we're not sent to be the hero, to be the savior. I mean, the world's got a savior, right? But, we are able to bless others, but at the same time, we receive this incredible blessing through them. And just the relationships that we developed through Dr. Eugene and Pam and Wanda, and so many others. I know that, there was probably, I don't think I ever went to Haiti. I went on several trips. I either was with Wanda and Pam, or we came across each other on separate trips. But always, whenever I went to Haiti, I got to see them, which was always a blessing too. But Dr. Eugene, he was my brother. I mean, he was just. I remember one time we were going down to look at some wells, and it was when he had just started on the hospital too. And so I went down with a couple other friends from River of Life, and I'm like, Dr. Eugene, what if we didn't stay in a hotel, and is there a place that we can just go camping or set up some, a tarp or, something like that, a hammock in the, back of somebody's yard, and then that way we just take that money and put it towards more wells in Haiti. And so he wasn't having it. Well,
I never said that, Wayner. You're a much better man than I am.
I was never going to sleep in one of those little hammocks you brought with you.
We were all kind of in awe.
Wayner's very outdoorsy.
You were kind of alone there in that.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Eugene made his kids sleep in the same bedroom, and he put us up in his house. And so we stayed with Dr. Eugene at his house, and Ludwin, made dinner and all that. And so we'd come back at the end of the day and all sit around and have dinner together. And it was an amazing time. I mean, they were, like Wanda said and Pam has said, they're family. I mean, they're family. And I love them all like families.
Dr. Eugene was here visiting, and so we passed him off. Bill drove him to Morganton to a McDonald's or something, and Wayner picked him up. Do you remember this, Wayner?
Oh, yeah.
And he went to Bryson City and did an interview with Wayner and everything. And so then he came back to Charlotte, and I said, how was that, Dr. Eugene? He said, Dr. Eugene got to see the Great Smoky Mountains.
Which is funny because Haiti has mountains.
Yeah, he was so excited.
That's
so, Wayner, how many wells did you build in Haiti?
So we ended up building over 150 wells in Haiti.
Wow.
And can I just say, like when we were talking early on, Wayner, I just thought, gosh, it'd be great if they dug one well. I mean, sometimes our visions are so small.
Yeah.
Like, I thought Dr. Eugene would never be able to build a hospital, and he did. I thought the microcredit loans would maybe be one community. Our vision can be very small.
Mm-hmm.
Well, people always say, do you go to Haiti to build things? And I said, really? Look at me. Do you think I'm going to build something? I mean, seriously? And I said, no, that's not what they need us for. And I think you said it earlier. We did not do charity work. Mm-hmm. Mary Lou always explained, this is a loan. This is not a gift.
Exactly.
You pay it back. But we what I described as our ministry is relationship ministry. Mm-hmm. We went and built relationships with people. And when we would leave a microcredit community, Haitians are so used to people coming and doing something and then leaving.
Never coming back.
Never
That makes them feel good.
That makes them feel good, the people that came. And they never come back. Mary Lou and I particularly, when we would leave a microcredit community, and we would tell them, we have the more privilege than you, but we're mothers and grandmothers. We understand where you're coming from. But we would always say, we will be back.
I love that.
And every time we'd go back, they'd say, you came back. We said, we told you we would. And we would tell them, we leave here and our work begins because we go back home and work to raise the money to do this, to be able to make this loan for you to be able to work. So it's that connection and that relationship that formed those heartfelt moments, and we had so many of them. They would always sing for us when we got to the community, and I just remember one time they were singing "How Great Thou Art," and we started singing it in English, and they were singing it in Creole. Those are powerful moments where God is in that place with you, making that happen. But times I will never, ever forget.
As that was unfolding that week of the 15th, I was checking in with our immigrant congregations in the Charlotte area and just hearing that people were locking down, people were staying home. People that were had papers or didn't have papers were scared and were staying home. And so there was a lot of loss of work, loss of income, people who were missing doctor's appointments, people that needed groceries, all these different physical needs started appearing really quickly. It felt like a natural disaster almost, but it just hit one population, one demographic. It's like or like a pandemic. It felt like a pandemic lockdown or something, but that just hit one subset of our community. And so we worked as quickly as we could to set up a fund where folks who wanted to support these immigrant churches that were supporting their immigrant members and neighbors could donate financial gifts to help that work happen.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing about that. So how are those funds already being used?
Yeah, so we did an immediate distribution that week of some funds that were already available to 7 churches. And these were 7 churches in the Charlotte area who have immigrant members and who already know their immigrant neighbors and members that were in need. And so they've used those funds in different ways. In that first week, a lot of it was groceries. It was kind of helping with bills and those kind of immediate costs. As the fund has unfolded and we've started to see, as I mentioned earlier, some of these nations being stripped from the list of asylum protection, we expect some of the congregations to be able to use these funds for legal assistance for their members and their neighbors. We've also, starting to see other types of bills beyond just food, rent, maybe it's car insurance or...
Well, dominoes, right?
Yeah, heating bills.
They have to prioritize, right? And so that everything moves up and then they're like, uh-oh. I mean, it never ends when you mess with someone's life like that.
Yep. Something we've also said that it can be used for is if a church with a large number of immigrants is losing income itself, that they can use these funds to make up for lost income so the church can keep functioning and keep their ministry going. We haven't had that yet, but... Well,
speaking of which, though, go ahead, Jesse. You got something on that real quick before?
Yeah, I was going to say
a fun announcement to be made here.
I think the thing about that is, it sounds to me like what the overarching thing that the fund is doing is, injecting the resources that are needed when systemic type changes are happening, because I think, for all the talk about immigrants and things like that, I think it could be easily forgotten or missed how interwoven our immigrant populations are with the wider American population. And it's not just people working certain jobs. It's church members. It's it's taxpayers. It's folks who are so interwoven into our society that it's almost like an amputation to take them out. And so, some folks might be thinking, it's just this one population. Like you're saying, Luke, it's like, it feels like a hurricane that's hitting just this one population. But, it does have wider effects to all of America that we might be noticing already. I know, Luke, you and the churches that you're working with are already noticing, but the wider society will notice eventually.
Yeah, they will. We have an announcement. Strangely heartwarming, ladies and gentlemen, because that was sad. But there is hope. There always is. Where we look for sparks of grace that can come from nowhere. So you just got to be ready and expectant. Luke, go for it, man.
Yeah, so we had raised $6,000 up to Thanksgiving, which is really generous gifts of individuals, some churches that donated to that fund, and we are able to distribute that. And then I got a call this week from the Conference Board of Pension and Health Benefits, and they said that they were going to make a donation of $100,000 to the immigrant ministry.
Let's go.
Yeah. So went from 6,000 to 106,000.
Wow.
So
thanks, Peter.
That's a crazy
exciting
call to get.
Yeah. And so I've been able to share that with the team that's administering those funds, which is the exec team of the Hispanic Ministry Council at the conference. They're just super excited. We're getting ready to send out the application to our 18 immigrant churches, UMC, Western North Carolina.